Hello and welcome to the C-Team. I'm Mike Curley.
And this is Frank Curley.
And today we're talking about one of our favorite super fighting robots.
Megaman.
Exactly. This is on the heels. Some of you may have seen the spirited Twitter exchange that we got into during Capcom's 30th anniversary live stream, where they announced, here's the thing, timing. First, they announced the Mega Man X games were coming to the new systems. And then later, they announced that Mega Man 11 was coming. So those of you looking at that tweet, that happened before the second thing I just said. So that is why. So you can stop tweeting back to me a week late that that they announced Mega Man 11. I know, and we'll get into that. First,
I will say, your ability to rant has not lost its touch since the B&G days.
I can rant with the best of them. I'm just more precise now.
We're less teenage now. That's the only difference.
I swear less, usually. But anyway, so it is the 30th anniversary of the Little Blue Bomber, Mega Man, known as Rock.
Yeah.
For the terrible pun, Rock and Roll, and their brother Blues.
This series is actually 6 days younger than I am.
Really? You are older than Mega Man?
Yes.
I
think it came out December 17th.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So he's a week younger, or a week older than Mega Man.
Yes.
So it's fair to say we grew up with this series.
Basically.
I mean, the first one we actually played because, Frank was born when the first one came out. I was 2. So, it took us a couple years to get to that point.
Yeah.
But the first one we really played was Mega Man 3 because there was a rental shop in our town that had
I miss
it.
that place.
Oh, yeah. It was one of those little dinky... It wasn't a Blockbuster. It was a little dinky... I don't even know if it was a mom and pop thing. Might have just been mom. But there was Mega Man 3, which is kind of the prototypical... There were 2 games
in a couple ways, yeah.
It's when you think of Mega Man, it has a lot of the hallmarks that started with that game. Sliding and Rush being the main ones.
Proto Man. Go back to the prototype.
So we rented this thing basically every week for a long time. We Game Genied the hell out of it.
Oh, yeah. Because we sucked.
I didn't legitimately beat the game until the Mega Man Collection came out on the GameCube.
Yeah.
That was years later. But, even with the invincibility and infinite weapon power, it was still a challenge.
In retrospect, I would say that Mega Man series is one of the easier series of games on the NES.
One of the easier ones.
Yes, because the bosses have weaknesses that you can find out. You have infinite continues, and you had a password system. It definitely doesn't compare to Contra.
Okay, it's fair to say that it's you can complete it. I wouldn't say it's easier in the going because some of those bosses are pretty devious. And Mega Man 2, I've still never beaten that. But the gameplay, it's difficult, but it's solid. It's not something that's difficult because of BS mechanics. Well, except for Mega Man X6, but we'll get to that later. And it's just decent, good gameplay that's very simple but very creative in the weapons and rush and getting through the levels, and it creates a lot of options. And that was something, a lot of games at that point, it was linear. You had level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. You might have gotten upgrades, but it was a linear progression. This game was the same each time.
You had to be in an RPG to really have that depth at all, and for an action game to have that kind of level of depth was fascinating. Yeah,
there is still kind of an intended way to go, and in the first one in particular, they go full on with the rock paper scissors thing, where you're playing as Rockman, Mega Man, and you go the first guy, the guy who you can have the easiest chance of beating, is the guy with scissors on his head. So, and that was a thing. Rock, paper, scissors was a conscious thing they were thinking about in designing these games. But the idea is you can pick any of the levels to start with. So if you pick one that's hard, you can come back to it later. You don't get stuck there. So I think that helped a lot in creating it. And, the game's great music from the start.
Oh, yeah.
The music... the music has always been on point, even in the games that kind of stunk. And, it's inspired a lot, including one of my favorite bands, the Megas. They have, they have a couple albums out, but the main ones are Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 3 music, and they're fantastic. So there's been a lot of inspiration, a lot of influence from this game, which is kind of interesting because it's not Mario, it's not Sonic, it's not one from the big game console first parties.
Nope.
They've always been a third party, but it's always been there from almost the beginning. He's been around as long as Zelda or Mario have.
Yeah, so as much as I was kind of against having third party characters in Smash Brothers, I think it made sense for Mega Man.
Yeah,
because of just how rooted he is, with gaming history, especially with Nintendo.
Yeah, if you were a kid and you were playing Mario, chances are you were also playing Mega Man.
Yeah.
He's one of the big ones. And frankly, it's kind of bullcrap what Capcom's been doing to them for the last 5 years, which, again, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, so
growing up on Mega Man, it was a big influence. We watched the Ruby Spear show, even though it was on 7 on Saturdays.
Yeah, right before our soccer games, too.
Yeah, we would watch that, then go play soccer. And, it wasn't accurate necessarily, aside from, the broad thing, here's Dr. Wily, here's Dr. Light, and roll.
It had such passion, though.
Yeah, it had enthusiasm behind it, and it was fun to watch. I've watched a couple episodes since then, and it's kind of stupider than I remember, but it has its moments. It's still entertaining, and there are communities around a lot of game properties and characters, and we found one in the Bob and George forums.
Yes,
which some of my closest friends I met through that. And part of it, another point of connection, the guy who ran Bob and George, he started a Mega Man 3 too. That was the first one he played. And it's the first one a lot of people played because that's, again, where the series really hit its stride.
Well, a lot of games kind of... It was a lot quicker to make games back then.
Yeah.
Weren't as... And, word gets around, and by the time it reaches some years, Mega Man 3 is already out. And I imagine it was the same way for a lot of series. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Mega Man 3, I want to say, came out by 1990. So it was definitely a thing where they were, if not cranking them out, but much faster if you compare to something like God of War.
Yeah,
God of
so
War
3 years to
3,
make.
God of War 3 took 3 years to make in itself, and you had smaller games in between them. But the main series, you're right, it was quicker to come out that early. But the bottom line here is Mega Man has been a pretty solid influence on us from the get-go. Some of our earliest memories is from playing Mega Man.
Hard Man stage.
So, yeah, Hard Man.
I love the names.
Yeah, the names are... You could tell, though, a few games in, they were running out of synonyms.
Yeah.
They were starting to run dry.
Solid Man. And I imagine at the office, look, we're not going to have a name that doesn't sound bad.
Yeah.
So let's just roll with it.
Hard Man, Woodman.
Woodman.
Again, we're stealing jokes from Bob and George now.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Mega Man has fallen on some hard times as far as Capcom goes in the last few years. Keiji Inafune, it basically started with Keiji Inafune's departure about 5 years ago.
I thought they canceled it and then Keiji left.
No, he was the one keeping it going. He left, and then within a month, they canceled everything.
Huh.
He is the reason that Mega Man Legends 3 was a thing to begin with. He was the one pushing for it. I believe he started the website that was supporting it, outside of Capcom's commands. He did this a lot. Keiji Inafune, he would start a project and get it going to the point where it would be more costly to the company to cancel it than to keep it going.
Just through Stockholm Syndrome, he would get a game out.
Yeah, it's okay, this is what we've invested in it so far, so if you cancel it now, that money's wasted.
Yeah.
And he would not tell his superiors about it until it got to that point.
You're a damn fine cop.
Yeah.
Also, you're a loose cannon.
Yeah. So, Keiji Inafune leaving the company almost spelled the death knell for Mega Man, because at the time, there was a couple games coming out that Mega Man Legends 3, Mega Man Legends was a PlayStation series, and 3 was going to be on the DS. And people have been clamoring about this for years. There was a fan base, there was demand, and it was one of the series that I guess had not performed super duper well. Because that's the other thing about Capcom. If it was not a sequel to like a cash cow franchise, they were just not going to prove it. So like that's why you have 17 different versions of Street Fighter, and you haven't seen the Darkstalkers game in forever. Because Street Fighter is the cash cow that you can rely on. And that's why you were getting more of the collectathon handheld Mega Man games and not Legends, because it wasn't something that they could milk. Yeah. So he pushed it through. This was one of the 2 games that were in the pipe, that were coming, that everyone was excited for, and then, boop, they canceled it. They said that they were going to release a demo to gauge interest in it, and then canceled it before it was ever released. I think there's one person on this planet who got to play the demo, and he said it was a pretty solid game. And
didn't he say, well, we canceled it because no one was interested?
Yeah, they said that before they released the thing, and this pissed me off at the time. I'm still a little sore about it. Get him off the moon. That was the hashtag I've seen at MagFest a couple times.
I will say, I felt the ending of Mega Man 2, Mega Man Legends 2, aside from him being stuck on the moon, was a pretty conclusive ending.
It was.
The arc for Mega Man was basically over, and him being stuck there kind of felt gratuitous. Why are we doing this? It
was almost like a joke that like his ship, they just didn't have a way to get back. Yeah. He went there almost as a suicide mission, and then he survived. And then
crap. Now what?
Yeah, it was played as a joke in the ending too. But it's not necessarily about his arc specifically, but there were fun games, and it was well put together, and it's just a damn shame that it's probably never going to get finished now, and certainly not finished the way Keiji Inafune would have wanted.
Yeah, and this is pretty different from like the whole Half-Life mess. Yeah, where we're still kind of baffled as to why they never made it. But here we have a reason. It's a dumb reason.
Yeah, it's a daft reason. Although there is a reason for Half-Life 2 stalling out where it was. The second episode of 3 that they were planning ends on a real big downer where a major character is just like brutally murdered in front of his daughter. And the writer has said in a couple places that depressed him, and he does not know how to go forward from that. So that's the reason I have heard.
Well, you'd think you would have those episodes planned out.
You'd think so, but apparently not. But anyway, back to Mega Man. The other game that they had announced at a time, they had shown gameplay, was Mega Man Universe. And this was going to be a little different in that I believe there was going to be like you could make levels, you could customize your character, and there was going to be different versions of Mega Man, such as bad box art Mega Man.
Yeah, which always just put a smile on my face whenever I saw that.
Yeah, it was this bizarre, like middle-aged man in a yellow vest. There's no yellow anywhere on Mega Man, his sprite, unless he's using a weapon.
Well, I have a theory on box art at the time, because Mega Man was far from the only,
the Japanese box art was correct, though.
Right. I feel like back then, artists saw video games less as they do box art more like film now, but they looked at it more like board games,
like a representation more than a direct thing. Like this is what you could imagine is happening.
Yeah, because it's 8-bit, there wasn't much they could do visually, so they treated it like a board game.
But it was still. It was clearly not Mega Man, and the Japanese box art was accurate and actually kind of looked like the game. But anyway, getting back on track.
Yeah.
There were going to be different versions of Mega Man, including bad box art Mega Man, the Captain N Mega Man, the little green midget that said Mega before every word. That would have been the perfect 25th anniversary game, and that too was just swept out and canceled when Inafune left.
It's like Turtles Forever.
Yeah, it would have been exactly like that.
A big roast of it, of the legacy it had.
Yeah, it was going to be a lot of fun. They were going to have, they had two really good games for the 25th anniversary, and what did they come out with? What they came out with after Inafune left and after they canceled his personal pet projects that he had put himself into was Mega Man vs. Street Fighter, which wasn't even a game made by Capcom. It was a fan game that they saw and basically gave the thumbs up to and said, here's your 25th anniversary, which is, beyond lazy. It wasn't even a game they made. It was, I'm sure it's a great game. I've heard nothing but good things about it.
It still feels like a middle finger, though.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's lip service. It was just, here you go. Here's something to say that we might still care about the character.
Here's some Mega Man stickers.
Exactly. Yeah. So the 25th anniversary came and went essentially with nothing. And I remember reading an article at one point. There was a Capcom USA rep. He said something like, I understand why the fans are mad, and I wish there was some game I could point to. And my comment on that was, yeah, that's what happens when you cancel everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was
burn those forests. Man, I wish there was a park.
Yeah. So Mega Man has not had a really big game. There's been re-releases, and Mega Man 9 and 10 were, I think 10 came out since then. 9 came out before. But, 9 was okay with the novelty of the old school stuff. 10 was, they were trying to retread that, and it didn't really gain traction. And the biggest game that Mega Man's been in the last few years was Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
That Smash Brothers for the Wii U and the 3DS was a better celebration of Mega Man than anything Capcom was putting out.
Yeah.
The only other things Mega Man had been in was like crossover stuff. Marvel vs. Capcom, Project X Zone.
Yeah, that.
Stuff like that, which, it shows that somebody on Capcom still likes the character enough to include them, but it's not the same as its own game. Oh, and there was, I believe it was, there was another fighting game that came out around the 25th anniversary that Mega Man, I think it was Namco X Capcom, where Mega Man was in it, but it was the bad box art Mega Man, and he was like this overweight 40-year-old guy, which, if it hadn't come on the heels of canceling everything else, would have been a funny joke. But the way it came out was, it felt like an insult, even though it was actually Inafune's idea to use bad box art Mega Man in that game. It felt like a backhanded, middle finger. Although, actually, a forehand and middle finger just doesn't mean anything. Unless you're giving yourself the middle finger. Anyway, sorry, I'm ranting.
So, yeah, and then they had, the re-releases of games that we've already re-released about 5 times now.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at that and just saying, that's just an insult.
Yeah, it's milking. It's milking.
That is, lazy. I have this game already. And... yeah, it's kind of how we felt about the Mega Man X compilation.
Yeah. I will say there was a bit of a knee-jerk to the tweet. because the person I was responding to said, oh, the Mega Man X collection, Capcom is redeemed. So no, they are not redeemed by re-releasing. But I will say, I understand a lot of people have not necessarily played all the games, and this is a good way to compile them all in one thing. And the previous Mega Man X collection just was terrible. The games were worse than in their original incarnations.
How are they worse? Just curious.
The sound design, especially for the PlayStation ones, was downgraded. It was the games were just not ported over very well. The reason for that was they took resources away from that compilation for Mega Man, the Maverick Hunter X series. The plan was to re-release Mega Man X 1, 2, 3, etc. as Maverick Hunter X games, which was a 3D remake of the original game, which was very good, actually. It was a very good remake, but it was on the PSP, so it didn't sell very well because really nothing on the PSP sold very well.
Yeah.
And that died, and because they had planned that, they took away a lot of the things that they improved for Mega Man Maverick Hunter X, like the voice acting, cutscenes, and stuff. That's what would have been in the Mega Man X collection, but they decided to do that in the Maverick Hunter series instead, and then that died before it got anywhere. So this Mega Man X collection at least will give you a proper intro to the series and should hopefully be good copies of all 8 games. Well, good copy is relative speaking here with Mega Man X 6 and 7.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed 6.
Six had
its problems.
It had a lot of problems. For one, the randomized level design.
Yeah, could have done without that.
Yeah, that was not good. And there was a lot of just bad level design where you're either taking blind jumps or there were some segments of the game where you needed specific sets of armor and stuff to get through. Where every other, Mega Man X4 is one of my favorite games, probably I will say the best of the Mega Man X games. You can get the armor pieces, make it easier in places, but you can get through that game completely easily without picking up a single armor piece. That's good game design, where you do not need to have a specific set. And that's the thing, Mega Man X4 had 1 armor set, Mega Man X6 had 3, and you couldn't necessarily... If you went into the final boss levels with your favorite armor set, you might not have been able to get to the final boss. There were jumps that you just could not make.
I think one thing that would have helped, I feel X5 was much better with that.
It was better. I still prefer X4.
I mean, I liked X5 the best out of.
I prefer X4. I think it was just more solid game.
Well, what X5 does specifically is, all right, you pick X and X4, where the hell is 0, and vice versa.
Yeah.
X5, it feels more like they're working together.
Yeah, this is true.
And it just felt more like a conclusion.
Yeah, well, that's what it was intended as. But going ahead with this, the X games, I would say I like them in general more than the classic series for a few reasons that I will get into a little later. But, it's good that they're having the compilation. I like that. But I stand by that tweet. I stand by my knee-jerk reaction tweet. It is not a redemption. What is pushing toward redemption is what they announced next, which was Mega Man 11.
Yes.
That's been announced for 2018. So they're still missing the anniversary. They're still missing it by a year. They got the announcement in, a month before the end of the year. So the things in Mega Man 9, they took away the charge shot, slide, and rush. So those are all back.
Yeah, which I personally prefer.
And this looks like it's going to be a modern game. It's 3D. The graphics look good. It kind of looks like it looks like it's taking off from Maverick Hunter X in that style, which I prefer over the powered up style.
Yeah, I never cared for the chibi. Kind of.
Chibi is one thing. That was a beach ball with arms.
Well, that's chibi.
It was an almost exaggerated chibi style.
Yeah.
So I think Mega Man 11, it looks good so far, although there is not much they've shown yet. Yeah. They've shown like a weapon, one boss, and some snippets of a level. But, it looks like it's pretty solid. They've shown Rush, the spring is back, sliding is back, the charge shot. And one interesting wrinkle that I noticed is when he's using the other weapon, it's not just a color change. There's a change in his helmet and the blaster. And that was something that Mighty Number 9 did. But it's actually, so you could people might think that it's copying from Mighty Number 9, but it's actually a thing that they wanted to do for the original Mega Man games, but like the NES just could not handle that.
Now I'm the phrase cautiously optimistic about it because Keiji Inafune isn't really part of this. And I wonder if him and Capcom are the two puzzle pieces we really need to have a proper Mega Man game.
Well, I would say Keiji Inafune created Mega Man. He has done a lot for the series, and I think he is probably the mind behind the story. But he didn't exactly code these things by himself.
True.
And let's face it, a Mega Man game, it's not complicated, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's not a complicated game where it's an old school platformer where you shoot things, and the rock paper scissors thing is the most complicated bit of it.
Well, my thoughts go back to the 3D Ninja Gaiden games. The first two were good, but then the director left. He made a piece of crap, and then Team Ninja made a piece of crap. So there is still something.
Yeah, there's always the risk that this is going to be just like that. It's not going to be good. I think it is because it looks like they are putting effort into it. Like it's not just another copy paste 8-bit thing. They are putting thought into kind of revamp. The sense I'm getting is they want to kind of revamp and do a soft reboot of the series, kind of like a start over.
Which is why they're doing Mega Man 11.
Yeah, but they're giving it a new look, and they're doing things with it they haven't before, like making Mega Man's form change. So we'll have to see when it comes out, what exactly happens with it. But for now, I think that they have an actual new Mega Man game announced is a good first step. I would have preferred they announced Legends 3, in which case I would have tweeted much more enthusiastically. You might have heard me like screaming in joy.
I would have preferred another Mega Man X game myself. I always felt those were the more interesting ones. Yeah, with the armor pieces.
Yeah, they're more complicated games.
Yeah,
or Command Mission. I would have taken Command Mission 2 as well. I enjoyed Command Mission. I like seeing. It's kind of like what I was saying about the Eco series before, the one ages ago in that other podcast.
Well, I suppose
where I like to see the parts of Mega Man that are not just blow everything up parts. So that's why I would want to see another Command Mission.
So the B&G forum comics.
Yeah, basically. That's kind of what Command Mission was. So I would like to see that. And I'm sorry, you were saying.
Well, I suppose unlike the Eco kind of depends on its obscurity, I feel, for its storytelling. Mega Man, not so much. It was less an effort to keep things obscure and more just, here's the focus. Here's what we're doing. So, elsewhere.
Yeah, so since Inafune left, there have been other Mega Man-like games appearing in the wild. The first one, of course, being by Keiji Inafune, the infamous Mighty Number 9.
Yeah.
Which started with so much promise.
Yeah, it's the hype thing, isn't it? The more you talk, the better it has to be. Or the more it's hyped up, better it has to be, or else the bigger disaster it's going to be.
Yeah, the more promises you make. And, it started off so promising with a huge Kickstarter that made, most of its stretch goals, tripled or at least doubled the original goal. And then I think Inafune, he let the success get to his head because he tried to do too much with it. He tried to put together, he was going to do a movie or an animated series with it. He was going to release it for every single system.
Well, I would say that it's better to do that than try to make it exclusive.
I'm not saying exclusive, but if you're doing it for PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 and the Wii and the Wii U,
it for PS2
or 3 and 4, but it's like in every single system that was available. Where but that was part of the reason for all the delays was they had 11 different systems to port it to, and that was a complicated thing. I think if they had done it, maybe start it on one system and then later on spread it out, or just focus on, Wii U, PlayStation 4, Xbox One or 360 or whatever was the current one at that, or make it handheld. Just something simpler would have gotten the game out faster.
Yeah.
But they also, the Red Ash thing was going to be a spin-off of it before it even came out.
Yeah.
He was trying to do too much, spread himself too thin, where he should have just focused all the effort on just making this game good. And then I think if he had done that, we'd be having a different conversation right now.
Yeah, instead of the angry conversation. But also, another company, Intercreates, the guys behind Mega Man Zero, went on to make their own spiritual successor, Azure Striker Gunvolt. There were 2 games in the series so far, and then they released a double pack of of the two games that they have, and generally, much more favorably. It has a lot of the same art style as Mega Man Zero.
The gameplay looks very similar too.
Yeah, I played a demo on it, and it's on my wish list. Knock on wood, I get it for Christmas, and yeah, I had fun with what little I saw, and yeah, I can't wait to play it myself. And so like I said before, we have the main creator, the original creator, separate from the body of the team that he was working with. So how much would you say the individual we deem as the creator in a business that's always been a team effort? How much influence does that have over the other artists, programmers, and the rest of the team?
It's hard to say, and I think it depends on the person as much as it does on the property and the company, because Sakaguchi was for a long time credited as the creator or the head of Final Fantasy, but we've had several games now without him, and it's still Final Fantasy. It's still got the team behind it, and I think the team at Square, and partly also because Final Fantasy is a series that is not like one long continuity, so I think
you could always start from scratch.
Yeah, you there are certain hallmarks to a Final Fantasy game, but it's really the whole team effort of it. Whereas Mega Man, it's hard to say. Some of like Mega Man X6, the game I like the least out of the whole Mega Man X series, was a game they made without Inafune. Mm-hmm. They made that. Inafune wanted Mega Man X5 to be the finale. He wanted that to roll directly into Mega Man Zero, and that's how the ending goes. One way or another, Zero is just not around, and it puts him in basically the exact same state you find him at the start of Mega Man Zero. But Capcom wanted to cash in, and while Inafune, I believe he was working on another project, they stepped in, they did X6 without him, without his influence, and they brought back Zero, and they kind of screwed everything up.
Well, I think specifically what he was working on was Mega Man Zero, because he planned for X5 and then the Mega Man Zero series. And I think people have basically regarded any X game after 5 and Mega Man Zero series as like separate continuities.
Yeah, that's the way it works the best, especially with the command mission takes place in the time that everybody assumed Mega Man Zero was taking place.
Yeah.
So in that case, I would say, you want the creator, I would say when there is a single overarching storyline and game philosophy, that is where the creator is more necessary.
Yeah, and not to bring up Marvel again, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe have kept a pretty solid storyline through it. I think there's like one person who's like
Kevin Feige.
Yeah, who basically was like, all right, here's the story we're doing. Whatever happens, it has to be with this story.
Yeah, so a series like Mega Man, where you had Inafune and he has it all in his mind where they're going, that's a series where the creator is very important. And then you have a series like Metal Gear Solid where restraining the creator is important. Where, Hideo Kojima, he put together some great storylines, but he needs an editor. Yeah. He needs somebody to just kind of go, okay, we're pulling this back. No, bad, sit. He needs somebody. So I haven't seen much of. I haven't really played Metal Gear Solid since Metal Gear Solid 4, which is the last game Kojima was. Or no, I believe he did work on Mega Man Solid 5.
Yeah,
that's the plot twist. Big Boss is actually Mega Man.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have not really played Metal Gear Solid 5, but for what I've heard, it's kind of like I kind of wish it hadn't gone the way it does, because it's kind of ridiculous in some of its plot twists. But the first thing
from a series is already ridiculous with its plot twists.
Yeah, but Hideo Kojima, Metal Gear Solid 4 in a lot of ways was just apologizing for Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 5 was, a prequel story. And then Hideo Kojima leaves, and the first thing that Konami does with the property is throw it into a zombie world, where that does not make sense to me. So I feel like
literal zombies.
Yeah. I forget the name of the game, but the premise is that the basically the mercenary company from Metal Gear Solid 5 is transported into a world with zombies. I think it's actually like Metal Gear Survival is the name of it. And Kojima has done some weird stuff with Metal Gear Solid, and Metal Gear Solid 4 has a sequence that is kind of almost a zombie apocalypse scenario. But even so, I feel like I feel like...
Are we sure this isn't the zombie mod someone made for it?
I wish. But so creator versus creative team, those are some examples where the creator is kind of central to it. But like Legend of Zelda, Shigeru Miyamoto is the head of it, but they have I feel like he does not need to be directly at the helm to make a good Zelda game.
Right. Well, like I said, it's a team effort. Just to point at one person as responsible for the whole thing is kind of, jumping the gun.
Yeah, Kojima is not programming the games.
Yeah.
Keiji Inafune is not doing all the code of the games these days.
Yeah. And, like, take Mega Man Zero, for instance. That's a game that was outsourced to another developer, but still had a lot of, executive meddling from Capcom and Keiji Inafune in between both of them. And story-wise, I'll call it the strongest of the main series. Somehow, just the chaos, led to that.
And that happens sometimes. The same thing kind of happened with Legacy of Kain. It's got a really strong story, despite the fact that almost every single game in it started as a completely unrelated property.
Yeah. So I heard that was much more the case of Blood Omen 2.
Blood Omen 2, Soul Reaver. I think Soul Reaver 2 and maybe Defiance are the only games in the series that actually started as, like, let's do a Legacy of Kain game. And I'm not even sure about that.
Yeah.
So,
but like just list some of the meddling that went on. X, not Copy X, but original X was supposed to be the main villain of Mega Man Zero, and it was supposed to end with Mega Man Zero 3. And Metal Gear Solid 4 ended the way it did, by Keiji Inafune, so they wouldn't continue the
Mega
story.
Man Zero 4.
What did I say?
You said Metal Gear Solid 4.
Mega Man Zero 4 ended the way it did because he didn't want another one to come out.
I think the problem we're having here is too many of these series are 3 words that start with M.
Yeah.
we're getting wires crossed. Just, when you're listening, just go by context clues. Yeah. That's what you got to do.
So people forget it's a compromise between the story creator, the programmers, and the producers. And when you give someone too much creative freedom, like this is an accusation given to Peter Molyneux, the guy who was behind Dungeon Keeper and Syndicate back in the day, but then Fable happened and people stopped taking him seriously, basically. Yeah, because he was given way too much, free reign. Remember
what we were saying before? The more you promise, the more it's going to crash.
Basically,
that's Fable.
Yeah, so I've played it, and it's got problems.
So anyway, so I mean, other series like Sonic, I can't point to a single person who is like the creator of Sonic. Although Sonic is also largely hit and miss with the gameplay.
Yeah.
Although the music is always on point with Sonic, but a lot of the games are just not great. Whereas I would say game for game, more of the Mega Man games proportionally are still good games than the Sonic games are good games.
Yeah. For those listening, look up the Mega Man Unleash Rank E music. You'll get a good laugh because I think it sums up a lot of
Sonic Unleashed.
What'd I say?
Mega Man Unleashed. And that one didn't
Sonic Unleashed.
That one doesn't even start with an M. Mega Man is just...
They're both blue.
Mega Man... Yeah, this is true. They
both blue and blow-up robots.
That is true.
And they also have someone clad in red who starts out as a jerk.
Also true. And someone who's yellow, who's kind of... Well, yellow-orange.
Actually, there was a Sprite comic that basically illustrated that the hero, blue,
The Lancer, red.
the girl, and Tails just goes, hey!
And they have a
High end trail.
a criminal mastermind robot. This is probably why Capcom and Sega did the crossover comic between them.
Oh, of course they did.
You got to look this up because it's actually pretty good. There's a point where I think Mega Man gets the 7 Chaos Emeralds and he starts just wrecking things.
Well, I'm thinking of that one.
I think it's called Worlds Collide.
I'm thinking of that one super move from Marvel vs. Capcom 1.
Yeah, where Mega Man just melds with everything and annihilates everything on screen.
Yeah.
It's something like that. Although it's more like a gold version of the flight armor from Mega Man 7. So, anyway, to kind of wrap this up, this retrospective rant on Mega Man. Like I said, it's been a series that's been with us since Frank was born.
Yeah.
And, it was the subject of many of our, childhood, play sessions when we weren't playing the games. This is what we would do between rentals. We would pretend to each be Mega Man.
Yeah.
So,
of a different power, I remember that.
Yeah, it was, we were kids.
Yeah, so now let's go over our fondest memory, not foundest memory as I type down here, but fondest memory. For me, of the original series, Mega Man 3. A lot of people like to clamor toward Mega Man 2. Mega Man 3 is better. I'll fight you for it. But yeah, it introduced a lot of things that are essentially Mega Man. Sliding, Rush, Proto Man, the stupid... Oh no, Wily's not behind this.
Yeah, it's just... That's not Wily, even though it looks like Wily with a Groucho glasses and mustache disguise.
Yeah, that's from Mega Man 6, but...
That's basically exactly what happens in Mega Man 6.
Aha! And no one was surprised. But that was before that plot became the joke, essentially. And I didn't realize the backstory of it until I read the manual years later, where Wily had essentially, quote-unquote...
reformed.
Come back to his senses. Something no one believed. The box art didn't believe it.
Yeah, Wily's on the box as a villain, and the manual has the gall to tell you, oh no, he's reformed. He's a good guy now. Wink, 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 wink.
Yeah, maybe he's like your cheerleading squad now. That's the only way I could possibly justify that. So Mega Man 3 will always, in my mind, be the best original Mega Man. Mega Man X is a toss-up between 4 and 5 for me, I would say. But my personal favorite, despite its problems, is Mega Man Zero, that whole series. I would argue it's the strongest storyline of the whole series. Despite the chaos between Keiji Inafune, Intercreates, and the producers, like with Legacy of Kain, it just...
It came together well.
Yeah, it came together well. At what I'll call one of the most metal endings in gaming history. Zero, against basically a giant falling satellite. And the satellite's called Ragnarok, and that totally fits this ending.
If Zero was a Viking. Well, he does have the blonde hair.
Yeah, he does have the blonde hair and the sword. And, well, the funny thing is, depending on who you ask, Keiji Inafune says, all right, Zero's dead, done, I'm out of here. Capcom's like, he could still be alive.
He's a robot, just rebuild him. They've done it before. That's literally how the series starts.
Yes, he already dies twice in the X series.
He's got a lot of extra lives, this guy.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm imagining the ending of Mass Effect 3, where... Yeah. You just get a glimpse of him inhaling and it cuts off. I always thought that would be fine to have that for Mega Man Zero.
And then you cut back, you're a robot. Well, you don't need to breathe.
Yeah. And of the 4 games, despite the awesome ending that Mega Man Zero 4 had, Mega Man Zero 3 will be my personal favorite. It just, you didn't have to level up. Well, your weaponry stuff, you still have to feed the frickin' cyber elves. Well, and then the Zero fight at the end... which was just awesome in every way. My only criticism for it is the Cyber Elf system. See, I don't feel Mega Man games should be about grinding.
Yeah, it's got to be more quick pick up and play, than that.
But upgrades through exploration, like a proper Metroid game is like that. And I would say some of the best Castlevania games are like that. And after like a whole series of getting regular upgrades, just, finding them, fattening up little elf creatures who cheerfully die for your cause.
It's a little fanatical, yeah.
Yeah, it felt like sacrifices to a war god. And
well, you were just talking about how Ragnarok was appropriate. What do you think Odin was?
Well, the funny thing is, in that game, I would say it's the only time the Cyber Elf thing was done right, because it's just one, and you upgrade her, and she just, comes with all this stuff. You don't sacrifice her; you're just letting her grow, which I feel was the better option. The way they did it, you had to grind a lot to stuff these little things, and I feel Cyber Elves could have been implemented story-wise a bit better than they were. Maybe just another like race of creatures or something like that. Not the way they did it. It was dumb.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so I'm gonna go a little different here. My favorites, the other two series basically, Mega Man Legends, both games, Mega Man Legends 1 and 2, very unexpected games as far as Mega Man goes, because every other Mega Man game was a platforming shooter. It was an action RPG along those lines, which was different, and I loved the first one. I thought the first one was really good, and I thought the second one really refined everything and expanded the world and gave you a lot of options and a lot of good story. So I like the exploration aspect to it. And the story does tie into the original games if you know where to look and how to think of it. It's like a far, far future thing past Mega Man X and Mega Man Zero and all of those.
Well, actually, let me cut in for a second. The prologue to ZX, basically after whole Mega Man Zero thing, came and went. The humans and the robots, came to a compromise and both became these hybrids.
Yeah, which leads into the carbons as they're referred to in Mega Man Legends. Yeah. So, as I said before, I like the exploration aspect. I like seeing more of the world, kind of like with Command Mission, where you see the world and you can get to know the people in it beyond just blowing up the robots. And I just thought they were both very well done games, and I was very excited for Mega Man Legends 3. I would have bought a 3DS for Mega Man Legends 3.
I know. I remember it's like, I should get a 3DS soon.
It was either that or Steal Franks.
Yeah.
Which I've done for other games.
Well, you took my DS.
Yeah, the DS. I hadn't stolen the 3DS yet. I think actually was this before the 3DS?
I think it was about to come out.
Right.
It was one of the big hype up games for the 3DS. I remember.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's one of my favorite games, and I miss it. And even though I want Capcom to still make Legends 3, I feel like if they did now, without Keiji Inafune at the helm, it will not be the Legends 3 we would have gotten otherwise.
I guess the sole creator is most important from a story perspective.
Yeah, the story, he's the person who knew where he was going with the story, I hope.
Well, he's not Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, well, Hideo Kojima knows where he's going with the story. It's just going to crazy land on the way.
It kind of feels like Jack Sparrow in the programming office, just like, I don't know what he's thinking, but we could trust him, I guess.
Yeah, the games have been making money, so close enough. Another game, actually, that I forgot to put on here, that I was going to mention but forgot, was Mega Man 6, which was, we kind of played them way out of order. Well, They were still in order because we went from 3 to 6.
3 to 6, then 8, and then X4 came. That was our first Mega Man X game.
Yeah. So I had actually asked for Mega Man 3 for my birthday. This was, years and years ago. I think 93 or 94, whenever Mega Man 6 was the new game.
See, now you're doing it.
Because shut up. Because we had rented it every week, so I wanted this game. But instead, Mega Man 6 was the new one, so that's one we got, and I loved it. It was the first one that I beat legitimately because Game Genie codes did not exist for it yet. And one of my fondest memories, the first time I beat one of the Robot Masters, I think it was
Windman?
No, not Windman. It was
it was one of the harder ones too.
It wasn't Iceman.
Centaur Man.
No.
Wasn't it?
No, he was the first one I beat.
Oh, okay.
But I actually think no, it was Windman was the first one I beat without getting touched.
Ah, right.
And that was a big moment for little tiny childhood me. And that was one I really liked. It's not considered among the better games, although it's one of my personal favorites.
Yeah, but I can't. I'll be honest. People nitpick about it, but playing through it, I never see anything wrong with it. I like the jetpack. I like the power armor he gets.
Yeah, it was an interesting play on Rush
Yeah.
as a character and as a thing, and I really enjoyed it. It was one of my one of the games growing up that I played all the time. And, again, this Dr. Wily with the Groucho mustache and sunglasses as a disguise. How can you not like that kind of audacity from a villain?
I remember Mega Man jumping out from the action. Oh my god, I could not have seen this coming.
Yeah,
and Light's just like, just get home.
Mega Man's not necessarily the brightest guy. So my other favorite, as we've mentioned a couple times before, as I said before, Mega Man X4, which is the first X game that we played on the PlayStation, and I would still hold it as one of the best, because 5 was good, and 5 was good as kind of a compilation finale. 6 I didn't like at all. 7 was at best uneven. 8 is up there, but 8 is up there because it takes a lot of cues from 4. In that, 5 and 6, they did a weird thing where you had to collect every piece of the armor before you can use it at all.
Which I personally didn't mind.
I liked the modular aspect in X4, and that's what X8 did. It still had 2 armors, but you can mix and match. You can use pieces from the different armors together. It brought back the ultimate armor again. And I like the emphasis on story in the X series in particular. X4 had a really interesting story that was buried under bad voice acting. And
it wasn't the worst.
It wasn't the worst. That would be Mega Man 8.
Let's get Dr. Wily.
Yeah, Mega Man 8 was voice acted by the crack team of whoever happened to be wandering around outside the building at Capcom at the time.
Elmer Fudd, an 8-year-old girl who had too much helium.
But X4, had a really interesting story, and it kind of showcases the moral ambiguity of the X series, where Mega Man, the classic, you're good, Wily's bad, kill the robots. X4 is a deeper story where most of your opponents are a maligned. It's an army that has been unfairly maligned by your side. It's a more political thing, which it still boils down to kill all the robots, but you don't feel as good about it.
Yeah, you definitely don't leave that story with like, yeah, I got him.
Yeah, it's a deeper, more mature story, which is kind of where the X series stands, where you can kind of look at it like classics for kids, X is for teenagers, and 0 is like the more adult story.
Yeah, 0. The interesting thing about that is, what if 0 was still a good guy, but with the Mavericks? Because the Maverick Hunters have gone absolutely genocidal.
Yeah, and it's
toward themselves. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's a weird setup they got there, but X4 is kind of where you start to see that ambiguity that persists through the rest of the series. Command Mission in particular has a lot of questions about, who really is a bad guy. Just because we label someone Maverick, does that mean he's actually wrong?
Yeah, like when X, accuses Colonel of being a Maverick, Colonel's perfectly sane.
Yeah.
He's perfectly is like, well, I got here. And it was really just Sigma and that jerk of a former Maverick Hunter that started it.
Yeah, so I like that story aspect. It tells a more complete story, a better story. Plus, you got to play as 0 in all his glory. 0 you could play as him in X3, where he was kind of like X in a lot of ways. He played very similar to X, where X4 gives him his own gameplay, and I think he's just more fun to play as than X.
Yeah.
I like X, he's great, but 0, the sword, it adds a new layer to the gameplay that was not there in any of the other previous Mega Man games.
Yeah.
So that's where I don't know if I'm ranking them, and X4 was one of Electronic Gaming Monthly's 100 greatest games I'm sure that had nothing to do with it coming out that same month as that issue. But so yeah, 30th anniversary Mega Man, I think Capcom is I think it's kind of like they had a bad breakup with Inafune.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, they're not talking to him. They're not talking to their kid. But now they're kind of trying.
They're torching all the husband's stuff.
Yeah, so they're starting to kind of make amends, or at least get back to the property, which I think is a good sign. Cautiously optimistic. Mega Man 8.
Knock on wood.
Mega Man 11 could still suck. It's entirely possible. I hope it doesn't. I want it to be good, but I'm still holding out for Legends 3, X9, Command Mission 2. That's my bottom line. That is where I will consider Capcom redeemed. If they deliver on those games, Mega Man 11 is a good start, but hopefully there's more to come.
Well, just to speculate, between Mega Man and Mega Man X, now, the BNG forums were filled with theories.
Oh, yeah. All of them unreasonable.
Yeah. Well, you take a time where for some reason Dr. Light is not remembered. Really,
well, he's remembered,
but all this stuff is lost.
Well, it was 100 years ago. In 100 years, the computers we're using are going to be so obsolete that they're not even going to matter. 20 years ago.
But why would Mega Man X, be a mystery?
Well, he was buried underground for 100 years.
I do wonder, what happened. I know Keiji Inafune is no, the Cataclysm didn't happen.
Yeah, the Cataclysm being a fan idea popularized on the Bob and George forums that the original cast was all killed by Zero.
And it's something even our comic touched upon. It wasn't because of Zero necessarily, but...
Yeah, we had an alternate explanation for it, but, we still killed everybody.
Yeah.
Which, that was the important thing.
Yeah.
If you had a Mega Man X-based comic in Bob and George, the original Mega Man characters had to all be dead.
And I remember just specifically Keiji Inafune said, no, Zero didn't do that.
Yes, probably someone who probably was on the BNG forums just straight up asked him.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's probably not important what happened in the grand scheme of things, because it's just another setting, and it almost works better as kind of an alternate universe, sort of like Marvel 2099 or Batman Beyond, where it's not necessary to know exactly what happened. It's just another setting for those stories and those characters to play around in. So, how do we want to conclude this? I think I was trying to conclude it, but then you got me started on the Cataclysm.
Yeah. I guess for myself, what I will want from Capcom, for me, the story is kind of done. Maybe just a new series with, the mechanics of Mega Man,
Well, that would be Mighty Number 9.
Well, yeah, but
a good one.
Yeah, a good one. You kind of have that with Azure Striker Gun Vault, but that's similar art style, but very different storyline from what I understand. Again, Zero story is over. I kind of consider ZX as a nice epilogue to it. It's like, hey, we're finally getting along. How many entries of Mega Man before it starts to grow stale, essentially?
Well, they're up to 11, so they're pushing it anyway.
Capcom, I hope you know what you're doing.
Yeah, we all do. So, This has been the C-Team. I'm Mike Curley.
This is Frank Curley.
I'm going to try that again because I screwed up.